What is trauma? Everything you know is wrong.
Whoa.
Well, not everything, but there are gaps and we're going to fill them. Mended light.
All of them? Every single gap?
No, there's not time for that. No, heavens.
Okay. Okay, since you've started it, Hotshot, what is trauma?
I'm glad you asked. Okay, look, there's the DSM-5 definition of trauma. The DSM-5 is the big manual of mental disorders, right? And it defines trauma specifically as something life-threatening.
Yeah.
Right? Your life is threatened, you're in immediate danger, or you witness something violent or the death of someone, like big things that everyone looks at and go, yeah, trauma.
Yeah.
We're going to expand that definition to include other things. A trauma is an event or a series of events that rob you of your sense of safety. So often what this looks like is, I thought my world was safe, and now I realize that it's not, right?
Yeah,
and
something happened.
Other times, I never had the experience of I thought my world was safe, right? In the case of repeat childhood traumas, I never had the chance for a sense of safety to really settle in.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference between having a trauma happen and then needing to, and having the ability to return to a place of safety because you had one before versus not having a place of safety to return to because you never had it.
Yes. And where we're expanding our definition of trauma along those lines is because there are so many things that could happen that trigger a trauma response.
Yeah.
Because it's not just physical safety. It could be emotional safety, relational safety, mental health safety, like all sorts of things.
Because you have safety in every aspect of your life, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, sexual, spiritual, relationally, right? And we don't often talk about the need for safety in all those different components, right? And you can experience safety in one area of your life and not experience that safety in the other area of your life.
Yeah. So we just talked about the different forms of safety and the different forms of trauma. So for example, if you experience that a partner was unfaithful, right? You find that your partner cheated on you. That's not a trauma as defined by the DSM-5 because your physical safety wasn't a concern.
Threatened.
But it's still a sense of, I thought my life was safe.
Yeah.
I thought my world was safe, my relationship was safe, and now that's all been ripped out from under me. And psychologically speaking, it's very traumatic. And then there's microtraumas. What are microtraumas?
Yeah, so microtraumas are a form of not belonging or feeling rejected. And so your experiences as a child being bullied, those would be microtraumas.
For about a decade,
right? Consistently you felt emotionally or physically unsafe or rejected.
Yeah.
If you have an overly harsh or critical parent, that can absolutely be a microtrauma. Because we all have the need to feel safe, to feel like we belong, to feel like we're loved, to feel like we're worthy. And so having any sort of event that pushes up against that or shakes that foundation in a large way or a small way is a trauma or a microtrauma. And
the way I phrase it is, if I punch you in the shoulder once really hard, or 100 times moderately hard, the bruising is going to be about the same, right? And make that relationships or psychological or emotional, it's a very similar thing. And how we respond to trauma as people is through avoidance and through fear, right? So we experience a trigger, something that reminds us of what we went through. And we experience panic. We experience our heart pounding, our breathing speeding up. Sometimes we go into full-blown panic attacks, or sometimes it's just an intense desire to avoid, to get out, to escape.
That can all be summed up as fight, flight, fawn, freeze, right? And our body is hardwired to respond to trauma in one of those ways.
And I think most people know flight, I'm going to escape, fight, I'm going to lash out, freeze, I don't know what to do, I'm panicked. But what is fawn? What does that mean?
Yeah, so if you're fawning, that's a form of people pleasing or taking responsibility for things that aren't your responsibility, right?
Right.
To just be like, oh, it's my problem, or I'm so sorry, or let me fix it.
Because if I fawn, I'll be accepted. Because if I fawn, maybe the anxiety-producing situation can be diminished.
Yeah.
You know, Alicia, this type of avoidant, fearful behavior and response to our traumas or to our triggers reminds me of a book that we covered on our podcast on our membership site, The Choice by Dr. Edith Eger. For those who haven't read the book, the very short version is as a teenager, she survived Auschwitz. And later went on to help people face the things that are traumatizing, the things that they're afraid of, the things that they would rather avoid. Because once she got out, she wanted to bury it, pretend like it didn't happen, not think about it. And honestly, who would? Like, who would want to go back there? But she discovered something very powerful. I'd like for you to read a quote.
Oh, yay. So Dr. Eager, in her book, The Choice, says, "When we force our truths and our stories in hiding, secrets can become their own trauma, their own prison. Far from diminishing pain, whatever we deny ourselves the opportunity to accept becomes as inescapable as brick walls and steel bars. When we don't allow ourselves to grieve losses, wounds, and disappointments, we are doomed to keep reliving them. Freedom, and I would add healing, lies in learning to embrace what happened. Freedom means we muster the courage to dismantle the prison brick by brick." And this is where I would like to bring up a saying of when we're going through a traumatic experience, whether it's a large traumatic experience or micro traumas, right? We have however we handled it in the moment, which kept us safe, which we are hardwired to respond for safety, right? And what so often happens is we keep responding that same way to any threat that reminds us of that initial threat, right? To any trigger. And so what used to keep us safe is now keeping us stuck. And we don't realize it because almost never is this going on cognitively. It's always going on a conscious or subconscious level. And so when she talks about needing to face the things that we've been hiding from, and when she talks about grieving our losses and our wounds, right? That's bringing those things from the subconscious and the unconscious to the conscious. It's bringing them to light.
Yeah. Well, and once things are brought out into the light, we can deal with them. We can manage them. And that's going to be what we discuss as we go on in this 3-part video series about trauma. This is the first video, just talking about what it is. The reason we respond the way we do to trauma is because, as Dr. Eager says in her book, we are hungry for approval, attention, and affection.
Well, and the way that I would put that is that we are yearning for belonging and acceptance and real love. We want to know in our heart and in our mind that we belong and are worthy and valued just as we are. And so often, all of us have life experiences that teach us the opposite. And we don't realize those life experiences are teaching us the opposite. And so that's part of the unlearning opportunity that we have with these traumas and these micro traumas, is to unlearn what we thought those experiences taught us. And what we thought those experiences taught us is that we don't belong, or we're unlovable, or we're unworthy. The opportunity in healing from trauma is to reconfigure our beliefs around those experiences.
100%.